Portela presents Night by Elie Wiesel, winner of the 1986 Nobel Peace Prize. This is a preview of Chapter 1, which begins after the foreword on page 1. They called him Moshe the Beetle, as though he had never had a surname in his life. He was a man of all work at a Hasidic synagogue. The Jews of Siget, that little town in Transylvania where I spent my childhood, were very fond of him. He was very poor and lived humbly. Generally, my fellow townspeople, though they would help the poor, were not particularly fond of them. Moshe the Beetle was the exception. Nobody ever felt embarrassed by him. Nobody ever felt encumbered by his presence. He was a past master in the art of making himself insignificant, of seeming invisible. Physically, he was as awkward as a clown. He made people smile with his waif-like timidity. I loved his great dreaming eyes, their gaze lost in the distance. He spoke little. He used to sing, or rather to chant. Such snatches as you could hear told of the suffering of the divinity, of the exile of Providence, who, according to the Kabbalah, awaits his deliverance in that of man. I got to know him toward the end of 1941. I was 12. I believed profoundly. During the day I studied the Talmud, and at night I ran to the synagogue to weep over the destruction of the temple. One day I asked my father to find me a master to guide me in my studies of the Kabbalah. "You're too young for that." Maimonides said it was only at 30 that one had the right to venture into the perilous world of mysticism. You must first study the basic subjects within your own understanding. My father was a cultured, rather unsentimental man. There was never any display of emotion, even at home. He was more concerned with others than with his own family. The Jewish community in Siget held him in the greatest esteem. They often used to consult him about public matters, and even about private ones. There were 4 of us children. Hilda, the eldest, then Bea, I was third, and the only son. The baby of the family was Zipporah. My parents ran a shop. Hilda and Bea helped them with the work. As for me, they said my place was at school. "There aren't any Kabbalists at Siget," my father would repeat. He wanted to drive the notion out of my head, but it was in vain. I found a master for myself, Moshe the Beetle. He had noticed me one day at dusk when I was praying. "Why do you weep when you pray?" he asked me, as though he had known me a long time. "I don't know why," I answered, greatly disturbed. The question had never entered my head. I wept because of something inside me that felt like the need for tears. That was all I knew. "Why do you pray?" he asked me, after a moment. Why did I pray? A strange question. Why did I live? Why did I breathe? "I don't know why," I said, even more disturbed and ill at ease. I don't know why. After that day, I saw him often. He explained to me with great insistence that every question possessed a power that did not lie in the answer. "Man raises himself toward God by the questions he asks him," he was fond of repeating. "That is the true dialogue. Man questions God, and God answers. But we don't understand his answers. We can't understand them, because they come from the depths of the soul, and they stay there until death. You will find the true answers, Eliezer, only within yourself." "And why do you pray, Moshe?" I asked him. "I pray to the God within me that he will give me the strength to ask him the right questions." We talked like this nearly every evening. We used to stay in the synagogue after all the faithful had left, sitting in the gloom, where a few half-burned candles still gave a flickering light. One evening I told him how unhappy I was because I could not find a master in Siget to instruct me in the Zohar, the Kabbalistic books, the secrets of Jewish mysticism. He smiled indulgently. After a long silence, he said, "There are 1,001 gates leading into the orchard of mystical truth. Every human being has his own gate. We must never make the mistake of wanting to enter the orchard by any gate but our own. To do this is dangerous, for the one who enters and also for those who are already there." And Moishe the beetle, the poor barefoot of Siget, talked to me for long hours of the revelations and mysteries of the Kabbalah. It was with him that my initiation began. We would read together, 10 times over, the same page of the Zohar, not to learn it by heart, but to extract the divine essence from it. And throughout those evenings, a conviction grew in me that Moishe the beetle would draw me with him into eternity, into that time where question and answer would become one. Then one day, they expelled all the foreign Jews from Siget, and Moishe the beetle was a foreigner. Crammed into cattle trains by Hungarian police, they wept bitterly. We stood on the platform and wept too. The train disappeared on the horizon. It left nothing behind but its thick, dirty smoke. I heard a Jew behind me heave a sigh. "What can we expect?" he said. "It's war." The deportees were soon forgotten. A few days after they had gone, people were saying that they had arrived in Galicia, were working there, and were even satisfied with their lot. Several days passed, several weeks, several months. Life had returned to normal. A wind of calmness and reassurance blew through our houses. The traders were doing good business. The students lived buried in their books, and the children played in the streets. One day, as I was just going into the synagogue,